Well, let's talk about laws. We'll talk about sound policy, and we'll make it about guns. I want to take the opportunity to advance our gun discussion because I like to. We have the story from Timcast.com. West Virginia's crime rates decline after state adopts constitutional carry law. FBI data indicates a steady decline in violent crime since 2016 when the policy was approved by the state's legislature. So I walk into a gun store, and I'm like, so what do I have to do to buy a gun? Like, you got to fill out your NICS form, the National Instant Criminal Check System.
Takes forever.
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes you get put on a delay list, but sometimes it's 15 minutes.
I'm always on the delay list because Daniel Turner is the most boring name in the world, and there are like 33,000 Daniel Turners, and I'm always delayed.
They got to go through it.
Yeah.
So sometimes they can be like, come back in a few days, or they might just be like, you're being researched, give us a few minutes. But in West Virginia, I'm like, okay, so do I need anything? No. I can just take this weapon right now. Yeah. I can put it on my belt. Oh, yeah. You sure you don't want to do concealed carry? I was like, you just put it right inside your belt. And I'm like, really? Yeah, it's West Virginia. Constitutional carry. You can't do it outside the state. And they do recommend you get your concealed carry permit, meaning you take the test, you get approved and all that stuff because it does benefit you. That is your background check, so you don't got to go through NICS anymore. You can just walk in and buy. But this is the perfect example. People in West Virginia live in a very different world from people in New York City and Chicago. So when you see national level politicians, like basically what we're just talking about is that there are senators and there are Congress people for the nation. They actually literally represent one state or one district, but they fundraise off of everyone in the world. So for those that missed the previous segment, we're basically saying like some guy in Virginia back in the day would go to DC, hear about a dam breaking in New York State and be like, I represent West Virginia. I didn't hear anything about this. I don't know. Nowadays, you'll get big corporations trying to get votes to crush New York state law by getting a federal law to like supersede it or by getting support from other places. So this is what ends up happening. You get Democrats who are like, we should ban guns. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll say this. First of all, Second Amendment, so you can't just do that. But I hear you. If you live in Chicago and you live in that world, I don't live there anymore. I can tell you what it was like living there. It doesn't make sense for you to pass a law based on Chicago's problems on West Virginia. Because in West Virginia, their crime went down when they told everybody, feel free to carry a weapon around. And the example I always give people when they're like, we obviously, we have different properties here for Timcast. And there are people who, come from cities and they're worried about guns and stuff. I tell people, look, when I go outside and I'm in New York, you guys have been in New York, I imagine, of course.
Yeah, used to live there.
Born and raised. Yeah.
Were you scared crossing the street?
It depends upon what stage of my life. Was I just like hit by a
street.
car? Oh God, no. No, we played in the street.
People jaywalk in the
We
street. They
played in
break
the
open the
street.
fire hydrants and spray. Imagine this: in Chicago, in New York, you'll be driving around. You'll see a fire hydrant open up and spraying in the street. Right? You've seen those before.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's in the middle of the street. Are you nuts?
We
There were
opened
basketball.
them.
People would put basketball hoops up to the street. They would play. When a car comes, and they'd move. In Chicago, we would skate in the street, and when a car would come, and we'd move. Imagine looking at this gigantic, massive metal hurtling at you at 35 to 40 miles an hour or whatever, depending on what part of the city you're in, and then freezing up and going, there are cars everywhere. What do we do? When I see people in West Virginia carrying guns, you don't even think about it. I don't think someone in the car is going to veer off the road and slam into me. Sometimes it happens. And I don't think a guy's got a gun is going to pull it out and just start shooting randomly. But there are people who live in cities who feel this way. And all of a sudden now they're using the weight of the federal government to go after states where it makes no sense. This is one of the biggest problems we're facing right now. And it's why even Sarah Silverman, in my opinion, is saying peaceful divorce. Because if we're at a point where you've got Democrats being like, we would like to pass laws for New York, but for the country, that makes no sense. I'll tell you what the problem is. When you see politicians running for federal office, they want to be in Congress, like AOC or anybody else. They are running for federal office and they go, I'm going to clean up this town. If you vote for me, we're going to reduce crime rates and improve schooling and get funding for our university but hold on. You're not a local politician. You're running for federal office. You're not representing the district's interests in terms of how they spend their own tax funds. You're talking about going to Congress and voting on war and budgets, which will affect your district. But when they're like, I'm going to clean up this town. No, you're not. You're going to D.C. You're going to be voting on cleaning up Afghanistan or coming back and cleaning up Syria. You want to change those issues, you vote for local politicians. What happens now is people are running for office on local issues nationally. And then they're saying, we've got a gun problem in Chicago, so we should ban guns for people in West Virginia.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Do you think that these politicians and lawmakers started off as people that had local pride and then they just got corrupted as they got involved in the process? Or do you think that they were just shills from the beginning to some extent?
I think Kirsten Gillibrand is a great example of that. She was a congresswoman from upstate New York, moderate Democrat. Hillary Clinton moved on. Her seat was vacant, and she got the job. And now Kirsten Gillibrand is as left-wing as Chuck Schumer.
Remember when she was in the bar?
She had a approval rating from the NRA. She had a positive approval rating. Wow. I bet you if you ask her now, she would probably be 100% anti-guns in all form and that's what separates her from, I think, as someone like Senator Bernie Sanders, because Vermont doesn't have a huge city. Bernie is only rural. So Bernie actually on guns is either pretty quiet or actually probably not that bad. But if you're a senator from a state like New York, Kirsten Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer, no, they just need to win New York City. They don't care about Albany, Utica, Schenectady. No one cares about those places. Same with California. Same with Illinois. Right? Oh, yeah. But if you're from a kind of a state that has like some city, but like it's a rural state, Vermont, the two guys from Connecticut, the two guys from New Hampshire, Maine.
You are spelling out why we need the Electoral College.
Absolutely.
When you look at states like New York, Illinois, they say, in Illinois, I don't need to win anything but Chicago.
Yeah. And that's all becoming all of America, and that's the ethos of my organization, powerthefuture.com, is the divide in America the divide in America, growing divide, I think, in my personal philosophy, I should write a book on this, is between urban and rural. And we were always a rural country that had big cities, but it used to be, when I was born, it was 55-45. And in my lifetime, that has flip-flopped. And now the majority of us live in cities.
So that's changing.
And city people are, well, thank God, but city people are making policies for the country. Look at the Green New Deal. Look at the high-speed rail and no combustion engine. That is written by someone who thinks like a girl, AOC, who was only known the city. She is not thinking of someone who is from rural West Virginia. So she says, well, we'll just get rid of the combustion engine. And you say, well, in Alaska, a lot of people have a little tiny airplane because that's how they get to the grocery store. Like, it is not uncommon to jump in your little tiny plane, and they buy planes for what you buy SUVs. $40,000, you can buy a used plane.
I think
maybe they don't really have their license, but it's Alaska. No one cares. They fly, they land, they go to the grocery. Ban the combustion engine.
I think I read somewhere that if we shut down all fossil fuel production within this year, you'd get like 60 million dead within a few months.
Oh, absolutely.
Probably more than it, actually. I think it's like within a few days, 60 million would die, mostly because they'd be unable to power refrigerators. All the diabetics would instantly die because their insulin would spoil. And then you can't transport food. You can't drive anymore. Yeah. So all of the energy transportation that grows food, transports food, and makes the water work, and they say that we're addicted to fossil fuels. It's not that we're addicted. It's that our infrastructure is built upon it. It's not an addiction. It's an energy requirement for sustaining this level of
and they have
civilization.
They have no idea how farming works, how ranching works, how manufacture works. So they will say something like the PETA folks or the whatever folks, like, this is cruel what you do to animals. And should we treat animals humanely? As we absolutely should, and we should always strive to be better. But the thing is that you live in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and you think food is going to Whole Foods and buying stuff in a package, and you have no idea what it took to get that thing. Look at this.
Daniel.
This is water in a plastic bottle that was. This is not possible but for fossil fuels.
Daniel, I was talking to someone during the primary. And it was, I'm sorry, not the primary. Yeah, was it? It was during lockdown. So primary was throughout lockdown, right? Wasn't it? Yeah. So. And I mentioned something like, if we shut down the economy, how eventually we're going to run out of food at the stores. And I had someone who was like a UBI guy, say, what are you talking about? We can just go to the store to get food when we need it. And then I said, if we do UBI and people don't work and don't make stuff and people aren't farming, then where will the food come from? And they're like, the store. What do you mean?
Oh, God.
I hope you cut that person out of your life.
It was Twitter. Oh. And I'm like, there are people who are literally sitting there thinking that like one day, like a little loaf of bread just appears on the shelf and slowly starts growing.
It grows, yeah.
And then you take it and another one respawns.
Yeah. Yes. They had to be trolling you, dude.
No,
they got to be good.
Oh, no. Sincere, I think.
Ian, please be troll.
Think about how stupid the average person is.
Yeah,
Now realize half of them are stupid.
When I was in first grade, we
Yes.
took the Iowa Basics, and I got in the 99th percentile. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess we all got in the 99th percentile because that's the easiest thing. They just asked me a bunch of questions, stuff they already told me.
Yeah.
But that's just not how society works.
People failed. It's like, but they told you this. I can't remember.
It was the most obvious. It was like, here's all the answers. Now write them down. And how people couldn't get it, I just don't.
And when people are looking at why food prices are going up, and COVID has a lot to do with that. Oil prices has a lot to do with that. Inflation, but as you were saying with this guy who doesn't know where food comes from, we paid so many. And working in a slaughtering house is not glorious work, right? It's probably really brutal. I'm sure it pays okay, but it's not that. You're not going to make a huge living. It employs a lot of ex-convicts. Right? It employs a lot of people with records because you're slaughtering cows. And I know this having talked to people who do this, who own these companies for a living, and they were making more to stay home the last year and a half with COVID. And so now you are bringing in beef that is not getting processed that we're throwing in the garbage. I have a friend who has 5 barns, and each one of them has 75,000 little baby chicks that they raise to a certain size, and then the Tysons or companies like that come and take them off, and they process the chickens. And that's why there's always chickens in the grocery store. But because of COVID, that was all shut down. And the chickens got too big. And all of the machines that process chickens, the chicken has to be this big or this big. And now the chicken grew an extra 2 months. And well, you know what they said?
Wow.
And this is and his mom was genuinely in tears. They said, go into your barns and turn off the AC and close the door.
Wow.
And that was what they had to do. And that was the FDA that said that.
And then what? Throw them away?
And then you throw them away. That was the FDA that was like, and that's what you do. Hundreds of thousands of chickens that are perfectly healthy. Why? Because the government said they're not essential workers. So now people are like, why is food so expensive? Government.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.